Andreas of Austria. Back. You're in Vienna, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, or luckily, I don't know.
What do you mean? You're alone? Are you staying? You're staying alone in Vienna. What are you doing there?
Yeah, I stay in an apartment of friends of my nephew's friends, because they moved, or they are in the countryside with the parents, and I stay here for 2 weeks just to make sure that I did not get something on these flights that were a little bit weird. Um, yeah, so no, I'm a few days, a few more days here in the apartment, and then I think I'm trying to go to my parents' place. But even there, I think I will camp in the backyard for a couple of days just to be sure that everything is fine.
Oh, you got to stay in a tent. You've got a tent with you.
Yeah, I have one here in Vienna. So I because they belong to the risk group already, and I don't want that they're
Right.
in danger.
Right. And so, what are they doing? I imagine the groceries or the supermarkets are the only thing that's open. Is that basically what's happening there?
Yeah, I think in the countryside the life is not that much different. I mean, there's no. I mean, they have a big house with a big garden. They grow a lot of vegetables and fruits anyway. But of course, they have to go shopping to the supermarket every once in a while. But the risk, I think, in the countryside, especially where they are, it's not very big. But of course, at some point, it will come there too. That's
Right.
the reason why I
What
want to
is?
be extra cautious.
Well, it's that's correct. But what's the Austrian government saying overall about this? What has been the response?
Yeah, there's some measures, like lockdown measures, typical for many countries in the world. Unfortunately, they are not very transparent, in my opinion, what is going on, because you know you don't know how old these people are that are dying. You don't know how many uh, they they actually assume that are infected in the population. So the information is not very clear what they provide, and yeah.
This is exactly my problem with what I'm reading here in the United States, which is that they give these death
Yeah.
totals and these infection totals, and sometimes they give terrible stories and descriptions of people dying, and they always give an age, and or not always give an age, but they often give an age, and they say, oh, the other day it was an infant 14 months old child that died of the coronavirus, but they never describe underlying issues, whether it was health issues, obesity, smoking. So I think they're presenting a much more grim idea of this
I
virus
think so too.
than the reality is.
I think, I mean, recently there was this Oxford guy, I think, and he did a mathematical model, and I think he's in his calculations. He thinks that the infections are basically in the millions. I mean, now we have 800,000 officially confirmed, but probably it's already much more. I mean, I can see. I know people that have symptoms they've never had before. When I went to the supermarket recently, I saw sick people at on the plane, at the airport in Bangkok, and on the plane from Bangkok to Vienna. I saw sick people in the countryside in Myanmar, or in remote places in Myanmar, in Thailand, where they did not have any confirmed cases of the virus, or only 20 in Thailand. I saw so many people coughing. I think this thing is all over the place already.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good sign.
Yeah, of course.
If the experts are to be believed, that we can get to the point where the spread slows because people have experienced it already. If people are immune
Yeah, but I
after you
mean,
get it
but
once,
also it
that's
would
if
be a
they are
good
immune.
sign, because it means it's not that dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous for still a certain kind of group, but for the majority of the people, it's not dangerous at all.
But that idea is something that they're kind of suppressing, that it's not dangerous, because they, at the same time, I believe it's kind of a lie. They want to protect the small numbers who are really going to get sick from this, which are going to overwhelm the hospitals if they're all sick at the same time. So they're projecting fear onto people, but it's based upon a kind of a lie, which is that most people are going to experience really no symptoms at all when they get it, but they can still be contagious. But you need those people not to go partying and go to the bars and spread it to all the people who will get killed by it.
Which is fine, but I think the way they communicate, it should be more clear and transparent, in my opinion.
I agree. But I think that they have a very cynical view of people, especially healthy people, that healthy people are so selfish and egotistical that they don't want to change their lives and risk spreading this to people who would be killed by it. You know, all of the in the U.S. we have this big thing. Like, I guess all these people have taken pictures of all these people at the beaches, all these young people partying, going to the parks. The spring breakers from college just kept drinking and partying and having sex in Florida, and people were shocked by this level of irresponsibility. But the reality is that they're probably not going to get sick. Maybe they will spread it. But if you just would have been honest with them from the beginning and not had this dishonest hiding of the statistics, I think actually they might have responded better than all of this fear. You know, trying to scare people with fear into doing something, it's a very cynical way of going about getting people to be motivated one way or the other. Fear is a dangerous motivator, especially when it's based upon hiding the truth.
Yeah, I think so too. Anyway, so Dallas is the same situation, but it's not one of the hotspots in the US, right?
No. I think in Dallas, Dallas is the worst of Texas. It's the worst city in Texas in terms of infections and deaths. And it goes up every day, but it seems to have stabilized a little bit in terms of the statistics. New York is by far the worst in the United States. Even Washington, where this started, seems to have stabilized. Okay. So I think these isolation measures have been quite effective. I think this is working.
Yeah,
to slow the virus down.
Not in some parts of Europe. But anyway, I heard the Texan governor saying something very interesting, which I did not hear from anybody else yet. But I don't read that many articles. Or watch CNN or whatever. But what he said was very interesting, because he's a 69-year-old person, so he's already part of the risk group. And he said if he had the possibility, he would, and he thinks that many other old people see it the same way, he would just say, okay, we risk it, but the young generation should not give up their lives. They built up this country for many decades and centuries, and now everything is just not working because there's these isolations and lockdowns and whatever, and this will destroy the whole economy. This will destroy the whole future of the younger people. So he said, let's get back to work again.
It was an interesting statement.
I'm curious how many other old people see the situation, actually, because when I look out of the window, I see mostly older people that are walking in the street. So
yeah, are they ready to get the economy going and prepared to accept death so that the young can work? I think it was a pretty dramatic statement that guy made. But it does lead to a real question. It does lead to the real question of if a small percentage of people are going to be victims and die or suffer terrible consequences, should the entire way of life of people be uprooted and overturned to protect a very small group of people?
No, I don't think. To be honest, I don't think so. We would be the only animal that is doing this. I think all other animals sacrifice weak ones to stay alive.
Well, it's like up in the far north, the Inuit, the old people, when they could no longer be productive, they would walk out onto the ice alone to die, or the younger generation, like the young son, they would find a day when their father or mother wasn't looking, and they would come up behind them and strangle them quickly.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I would not
strangulations.
I would not go that far, but uh, but not doing these lockdowns and stuff like this. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's okay for now, because now they have to get to know this virus. Maybe there is still data missing to make final decisions. But once they have enough information, I think they have to make decisions, and they have to communicate why they made these decisions, in my opinion.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. But the lieutenant governor in Texas who made that point, he's bringing up a very interesting philosophical point which exists kind of broadly right now in the Western world. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that trader who became kind of a philosopher, Nassim Taleb, who wrote about the black swan and all of these ideas of uncertainty. Well, anyway, he's got this idea. It's quite an interesting one. It's called minority rule. And the idea is that now we live in a society or a time when minorities have taken power, excess power relative to their small numbers. And it's the idea that they need justice and they need to be respected. And so if there's a policy that's going to exist and it's going to hurt like a few people, but it'll be broadly good for a lot of people, you can't accept the policy because it's being unjust to a few people. So you want to make policies which are just to these groups that are injured. So it's kind of it's a reversal of the way things have always gone, where you legislate for the masses. Instead, now you're legislating to protect like gays, or you're legislating to protect a minority group. In any case, this coronavirus seems to be something similar to that, which is that if death rates are very, very small, you want to upend the entire world economy to protect maybe 1% to 2% of people that are alive.
I think it's much less than 1%.
Yeah, it could very well be. It could very well be. But then the question is, if it is really less than 1%, why are they choosing to do this? Why would the governments of the world decide to do this? And if they do have this information, that it really is such a small percentage. So I'm curious as to, and this is perhaps a cynical view, but it seems to me that there's a chance here for the states and corporations to expand their power. We've already seen it in the United States. They've just released the biggest stimulus package in the history of the United States, $2 trillion. And they're going to give checks to the American people. I'm going to get a check in the mail. And everyone's going to be happy about that. But the bulk of this money is going to corporations. And it's corporations who have made terrible decisions in terms of enriching themselves and their CEOs, and put themselves in a position where a virus like this or an unexpected circumstance could wipe them out. This is irresponsible business, and this is yet going to be another transfer of money from taxpayers to corporations. So it's being exploited. My point is, this virus is a chance to exploit and expand power and to enrich the already rich. I don't believe that this is the end of anything. This is just a further expansion of all the things we've already seen.
Oh, that would be horrible, because I still have hope that this virus will change things to the better. I know that there is the risk that these governments like the idea so much that they know everything about us, where we go, because now I don't know how much they do it in Austria, but in some Asian countries, they deal with this virus much better, because these people, the government all the time know where these people are all the time.
Exactly.
And I don't know how you do it or how they do it in America, but I'm sure we will go towards a world that is more similar to Orwell's 1984. But I think people are seeing. I'm hoping that the people are getting aware that things that are caused by the virus are actually pretty good, and hopefully that will be the same after solving the problem with the virus, if this can ever be solved.
Right, but we're already going to see things like perhaps China's success with the virus. They seem to be successful if you can accept the official statistics, but they're being successful because they are surveilling the entire population and monitoring everywhere they go and denying them entry into certain places, and they have their whole medical histories. If that is the model with which other governments are going to try and fight the virus, then it's inevitable that the virus would just cause an expansion of the corporation and the state, the surveillance state, and all this stuff. And the other interesting thing is that what happens when the vaccine comes out? What if I don't know about in Europe, but a lot of people in America refuse to take vaccines. They think vaccines are causing autism in children and other issues. Will the vaccine be mandatory? Would your job say you can't work here unless you've had the coronavirus vaccine?
I mean, first of all, I'm not very optimistic that there will be one, because for all known coronaviruses, they were not successful to make a vaccine, as far as I know.
Right. The SARS, they were working on it, but then SARS kind of disappeared, so they stopped.
I don't know if they stopped working on it, but also, I mean, a typical cold. I think 20% of a typical cold is caused by already existing coronaviruses, which are by far not as strong as the flu virus, but it's very similar to the ones to the one right now.
So
there's no vaccination for this.
So you think a basic cold is a coronavirus?
20, I read 20% of a basic cold is caused by a virus, which is a coronavirus. Yeah. So there's very, very mild coronaviruses. There's, including this new one, there's 7 known coronaviruses now.
So essentially, people may be trying to solve just a severe common cold. That's what they're trying to solve, and that's unsolvable. You're not going to be able to find something.
I mean, I don't know if they're looking for a vaccination for these old coronaviruses. I don't know if they were looking into, or like seriously looking for a vaccination for SARS and MERS and the 2 dangerous ones. I mean, now they definitely spend a lot of money in finding something for this, but I don't know. I think we should not rely on the fact that there will be a vaccination. Maybe at some point we just have to accept, okay, we have to live with this thing. We have a temporary immunity, maybe not even, but yeah.
I'm also thinking
all these things that I would like to know, and there's nobody tells us anything. They're not even talking about these things. Even though I know that they don't know, but at least they could talk about some progress, or what their experts say. I don't know. But for me, I think, on the island in Burma, I went there with a few goals, and one was actually to learn gardening, which I did not because I was too busy with other things. But at least I learned some. I found out that there is some interesting things in the world, one is called bokashi, which is a food waste management, or you basically have very fast composting of food waste. And the other thing, I heard the expression many times before, permaculture, but I had the possibility to have a guest on the island who is an expert in this, actually 2 of them, one French guy, one American guy. And I think this is where I'm going to, not only to be environmental friendlier than going shopping in the supermarket where I get imported fruits and vegetables, but also to make myself more independent. And independent also, I don't want to deal with these problems actually that we have now. I want to be somewhere in the middle of nowhere and enjoy life, by watching vegetables grow, and I mean, we talked about things like this quite often. When I was in Spain, I had this idea. I mean, I still have to make a little bit money to be able to buy a little piece of land, but this is I think my future. I don't want to know what is happening out there in the world.
Well, both of us have been talking about this even before this virus, but this virus further solidifies the idea that the cities are not good places. All of this, all of this travel and tourism and globalism, it's not really a good thing. In fact, if anything does good come out of this virus, it will be that the local cultures and local groups, families, smaller groups of people will become the norm, and people will be resistant to outsiders because the outsiders could be bringing a virus that could kill people. That's quite an interesting idea, which is the opposite of globalization and one world government and the expansion of one idea to dominate.
Yeah,
I'm always interested in small groups that break away in the very interesting identities these groups form and the ideas that come out of them. And I mean this in a philosophical sense, but also in a genetic sense. Darwin had an idea called genetic drift, which is that isolated species can develop in very, very different ways. And if you go the route of globalization, where all of everyone is living together, you get a one identity human being.
Yeah, that was the
I
case.
find it more
already
interesting
anyway.
if you have all of these.
So similar.
Right. It's much more interesting if we're all separated and broken apart. And in fact, that we fear each other. Fearing each other is even better. Like hating and fearing each other creates the real great separation. Okay. Those walls are wonderful walls. And it causes great drift, cultural and genetic drift.
To be honest, I enjoyed having the privilege to have this little book called Passport that allowed me to travel to all these interesting places in the world. And to be honest, I still have the desire to go to some places and experience the beauty of the nature there, or the beauty of the culture. So I mean, in the last 12 years, I traveled way too much. I mean, my carbon footprint is probably pretty high, but only because I was flying a lot. My life standard is very, very simple, very basic. But it's still probably very high even compared to typically Austrian. But so I would definitely like to reduce this and actually also have a positive impact on the carbon, on my carbon footprint. But a few more nice experiences in these beautiful parts of the world. I hope I still can experience this.
Well, I'm not against travel completely. I'm not like thinking that no one should ever travel again, but I am for travel being a lot more difficult to do. Make it so hard to get visas, make it so hard and dangerous. All these things are good. The idea that like fat girls with a backpack could get on airplanes and travel to hostels all around the world, like that's a crazy idea 100 years ago. If you were a fat girl, you could, with a backpack who didn't know any languages, it would be a suicide mission to fly to Kazakhstan. You can't do that. So bringing back the danger in travel, when travel was associated with like people like Odysseus and Marco Polo and these brave men who went off to these strange and bizarre places and risked their lives, that is interesting, But backpacker travel with people who have no skills at all and are overweight, yes. The coronavirus and the locals should probably just kick them out or abuse them or hurt them.
Are you serious? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
they deserve it.
I know backpacking became a very bad form of, or just another kind of mass tourism. But I mean, I was part of it somehow. I always criticized most of them. Some of them were still travelers I could identify myself with, but Yeah, I also don't see a bright future for tourism. I was working on this beautiful island. I still hope I can go back next season because my work is not done. I got my vision changed quite a bit, and now it's not about the experience underwater. Now I would like to create something that is a beautiful thing for not only tourists but maybe also for locals and also for nature. That would be my goal. But let's see if it's possible or not. There's so many factors right now that don't allow me to make any plans. I came back basically because the Austrian government announced that they will mobilize reserve soldiers. I was part of this system, not because I wanted it, but when I was a teenager, in Austria, every male teenage man has to participate in the military service or the civil service, and now they are mobilizing both of them. So I think in total 6,000 people, and if you're not able to be there when they call you, then you get a big problem. And that was the main reason why I came back. That's also a reason why I don't feel guilty to get unemployment money right now, because I came back because the embassy in Bangkok told me, no, you should definitely go back. The chancellor said you have to go back. I mean, all the foreigners have to go back to Austria to support the country. And
would they still? Do they want young men, or do they just want any man?
No, basically any man. Today they announced that they want voluntary helpers in hospitals and things like this. So yeah, also harvesting on the fields. They are looking for people. So whatever jobs are available, they look for people that are willing to work for free or for low pay. For the civil service, what they did, and for the military service, they extended the service, which is I think normally 8 months. They extended it by 3 months, and after these 3 months, they mobilize former civil servants and soldiers.
Do you expect to be
No, not really, because I'm probably at the old range already, on the old side of the people that are possible candidates. I don't think so, but there's still a chance. And if I'm stuck in Southeast Asia and then I had no idea what can I do. I was thinking, okay, I could survive on the island. At some point, probably there will no more supplies coming by boat, because at some point maybe they will run out of money. They will run out of diesel. There's no more people working on the mainland that could organize things. That's still okay. I could spearfish and scuba dive and bring up some lobsters or whatever. But nutrition would become a little bit difficult. The island is not very fertile, not yet. That's one thing we want to change with all of these bokashi and permaculture initiatives. But yeah, I was really thinking a lot. What should I do? And I waited basically until the very last moment, and then I booked a very expensive flight on the day where they had the last flight back to Austria. And now they
wow.
Yeah. And I mean, now they have these chartered flights chartered by the government, which are very expensive for the people. And they fly back home people from all parts of the world now. Yeah, I don't know. It
is the. Let me ask you this: what's happening on the Austrian-Italian border? Are there soldiers of Austrian there at the border now, or what's going on?
Yeah, but I mean, there's nobody traveling anyway.
But they're trying to stop people.
Yeah, of
there are
course, the border
protections
is
set
closed.
up, right?
The border is closed.
But when you say closed, does that mean that there are armed Austrian soldiers on the border?
I can imagine, yeah. There's definitely more police and military presence, but not because they're fighting against an enemy. But who knows what is happening in the future? I mean, the European Union will collapse anyway, I think, because there's no, as you said, people will get more and more back to small groups and small communities, but also people will become more nationalistic in the future. So borders will become more important again. There is no more border crossing without passports and whatsoever. Maybe even health certificates if you want to go to a certain country, probably even within the European Union. They are not helping each other. I mean, things happened here you cannot imagine. The Germans confiscated or did not allow a truck to go or to drive over the border to Austria with masks and disinfection stuff for a couple of days, and it was needed already. The Czech did the same with the supply plane from China that was supposed to go to Italy. They basically used it themselves in hospitals, and in Italy the people were dying because they did not have enough material anymore. The European Union is not doing a great job at the moment. I mean, probably never doing a great job, but now it's time for the nations, and that's pretty sad in my opinion, because I was hoping that the people are getting or don't see these borders anymore, but now I think the borders will play a much bigger role, unfortunately.
Well, the European Union was always a difficult project because do you feel like a European? I mean, when you're hanging out with a guy from Norway, do you say, "Oh, you and I are both Europeans. We share that." You're trying to share a continent, and it doesn't really. There's not a sense of cultural belonging. There's no European culture.
I think
it's too broad.
I think
much too broad.
What Europeans have is a mindset, and I definitely considered myself European when it came to a progressive mindset. So that makes me feel more European than or that makes me feel more similar to a Norwegian probably than an American, even though a very educated American.
But it's political. But it's political more than it is cultural. That's shared.
But as you said,
your politics is similar.
There was no cultural differences anyway anymore. In the last 12 years, I observed that people are getting more and more similar, and in Europe you just have a language that is different. If you're Scandinavian or Spanish, but at the end of the day, they're still similar people. I don't know. I definitely considered myself European, and
well, as opposed to like American, that it seems to be like the whole European project was an idea to compete with America, which is such a big country. European countries on their own found it difficult to compete economically. So you come together as a continent so you can share your power and put it together into one. And economically, you have the clout to do business. It's always like a political and business
thing. It was also
thing.
to avoid a war again. I mean, this continent needed a solution to avoid a war, and then a project where all these nations were part of it. I think that was I mean, I still don't think that in Europe there is a big chance now in this crisis. But who knows how this will end? How we will see in a couple of weeks where we are. But I don't think that there is a big risk that the European continent or most countries will do something stupid again, like a war.
Yeah, I keep thinking though that this crisis may be an opportunity for some people or some countries to think that they can do some things which they weren't able to do during a healthy time.
In Africa, I mean, I don't know. I have the theory that the virus probably is not that bad anyway in warmer countries. So I mean, at the beginning they said it's not dangerous in tropical countries. I think it's partly true. The spreading is that I can imagine is slowed down. So let's see how in Africa this thing will develop. But I think with all of the other diseases they have down there, there's probably also a big portion of younger people dying down there, especially when you consider how bad the health system is there. Right. Many countries probably have a high risk that politically they will not be in a good shape during and after the crisis, or let's see how long this crisis takes.
Yeah. Well, I'm enthusiastic though that it's not a crisis at all, and like what you're saying, we have widespread infection, but we just don't even know it.
I mean, you still have.
This could very well pass. If that's the case,
you still know many people.
This could very well pass quickly.
Sorry?
If this is the case, like your theory that we have much wider spread infections that we're talking about, this could pass very quickly.
Yeah,
with
definitely.
a bunch of a bunch of already sick people dying and going to hospitals, and then we peak very quickly. I mean, Italy might be going through this right now. They might have hit the peak and slowing down.
I think Italy is not a reference anyway, because where the hotspot is in Italy, in the Lombardia. I mean, look at the pollution maps. This is the dirtiest, the most polluted part of Europe when it comes to air pollution. You know, all of these people. I mean, probably until now, this virus saved people's life because air pollution is responsible for millions of deaths every year around the world. And now all of these planes are not flying, way less cars in the streets. So all of these factories are not working properly. So all the pollution of the air is much less at the moment. So maybe the balance is actually positive.
So perhaps you could look at a world map of polluted areas.
Yeah.
So you're looking at areas with a lot of industrialization and people who have respiratory
problems.
problems.
Look at it in Spain.
And you look at coronavirus.
Madrid is a highly polluted place, very bad air.
Well, New York is too. New York is the whole area of New York is terrible.
These will be the places with a high death rate.
Huh. Very interesting. So you look at pollution.
Yeah.
I mean, also you have the compound problem of older people living in Italy.
Yeah, definitely.
So you have an old population, and you have respiratory illnesses because of pollution and smoking. You know, there's that too. But pollution might be a bigger driver of this. That would be interesting if that's true.
Take a look at these maps and maybe.
Because isn't Wuhan like a big industrial center?
I don't know. I don't know much about. I mean, they have all these 10 million people cities, and nobody knows these places actually.
These terrible places where these viruses come from. No one knows about them. Yeah. Well, this is interesting to look at a map of like pollution across the globe and to target these places as hotspots. Well, I mean, if you're looking at a place for pollution, it probably has a lot of people already living close together, and if you're saying they have respiratory problems because of the air they're breathing, that makes them very susceptible to infection. Severe infection. That's an interesting thesis right there. That pollution, maybe this is this gets back to your other idea. You were talking about to me before about this. That the virus will be something that helps drive this idea of stopping climate change and reducing carbon footprints. And
because people are already experiencing changes, and I mean, you know, not only because there is already positive changes in the world, but also people have to understand what the reason is why these viruses outbreak every once in a while. That's because humans don't treat nature well. You know.
Well, it's true. I agree with that.
The virus, like the typical, I think in Africa, the Ebola virus. I think it's also one that is found mostly in bats, but it jumped because they cut so many trees that so many bats have to live within a much smaller area, and then the virus has the chance to spread there. Most of them, I think, are not even how do you say pathogens for rodents or for bats, but some of them maybe are, and every once in a while they jump to another host. And with Ebola, I think it was a couple of times some apes like chimpanzees or whatever, and then these were killed by humans. So because the area where the bats could live is already much smaller, that increases the risk that the virus can spread, and that the virus has to at some point maybe even find a new host. And so we definitely have to look into solutions for this. We cannot treat our planet like this all the time. The next virus maybe is a much worse one. And people have...
Well, I think humans since the dawn of agriculture and living in cities and trying to control their environment to create surpluses, they've always been causing these diseases. You know, when they lived in close proximity with animals, farm animals, and they were farming, they would kill all the weeds and create these monocrops that eventually would cause different kinds of parasites to grow in the food, to destroy the soils, damming the rivers, all of these things which they did to control the natural environment and to create these surpluses from it, to harvest these grand projects, to harvest as much as they could from the nature, have caused these illnesses. And by living in close proximity with each other, there's the possibility of these things spreading very rapidly. But it's all unintended consequences. And they haven't seen it. It's one thing that's it's a mystery. Like from early agriculture, a lot of human beings who were living in the cities were just dying of terrible illnesses all the time, but they never changed their way of life. They just continued with the way of life until people developed enough immunity to smallpox and to these other diseases that the human population could grow. But there's some studies done by anthropologists that for like 5,000 years of living in cities, human populations were stagnant, even though they had all these people having sex and making babies, and they should have been living, but no one was living very long. They were living horrible, sick lives, and they were dying of these illnesses that were being created from living in close proximity with the animals, and just the kind of stuff that's going on in China now in some of these places. And so, but what's interesting is that human beings stubbornly held to the way of life. They didn't say, man, it sucks living in the city. Everyone gets sick and die. Why don't we go live like a hunter-gatherer? They seem to be very healthy and living in the forest and hunting and sitting around the campfire and being very happy and healthy. Why don't we live that way? But they never made that choice. They continued on in the cities until finally there was enough immunity to these diseases that they were able to grow the populations to get to what we have today. So I'm optimistic. Like, I think there's a chance that a way of life could change, but I think something much more dramatic has to happen for the capitalist system and the way we're headed to be changed dramatically. I just think something much more malicious has to come.
I don't know. I mean, on an individual basis, I think a lot of people will change. For example, this permaculture idea. I think a lot of people will have the idea, okay, I want to have a little piece of land I want to be as independent as possible. You can do this even in the city if you have a roof or whatever. I am optimistic, or not optimistic, but I'm hopeful that a bunch of people will change. Probably it was people already anyway that knew already, okay, I'm doing something wrong here, but I am not exactly sure what I'm doing wrong. But maybe for some people this virus provided some answers to questions they never had. I would count myself to this group of people, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know really how to take it. I think I'm not optimistic that it's gonna bring something good. I think probably it's just gonna continue to solidify power with the people who have power. I don't see a change in any of that. I don't see a change in the elites. I don't see any changes in the ruling class. These people they do not want to see any change happen, and you might have some separation between countries, which interrupts their project of globalization, but they're going to find a way around it, and they're sneaky.
Another good thing about this virus is it scares the shit of the elites too. Probably. I mean, in England, the how do you say, the son of the Queen, Prince Charles.
The Prince, yeah, Prince Charles.
Prince Charles,
yeah.
He's infected. The Prime Minister, the Health Minister, and another one. So, and I'm in France. Now, where was it? In Spain as well. I think 4 ministers are infected, and Tom Hanks. Nobody is. Or can make sure that he or she is not getting infected. So, what I think this will be the case. I think the elites or whoever, there will be more money for research on diseases, on disease control. It can be viral, can be bacterial, because also, I mean, the WHO says the biggest threat to humanity is actually bacterial multi-resistant bacteria. So a lot of antibiotics are not working anymore. So they definitely have to look into this too. They have not only look into things that already exist, they have to do research or start and invest a lot of money in things that will become a problem if we don't spend a lot of money right now.
But what historically has happened with these outbreaks, maybe this one is going to be different, but there is no real preparation for solving problems in terms of diseases
that's not true. Taiwan, for example, I think the vice president or vice chancellor or prime minister, I don't know how they call it, is a specialist in epidemics, and they were much better prepared. You can see that also in the numbers. Of course, they do the surveillance with the phones and everything, but there is ways actually to be better prepared than what we did. I mean, if you have people like the spring break crowd and stuff like this, then there's no preparation. Yeah, that's true. But maybe the next virus is much worse anyway, and these people are not a big problem for a long time.
Yeah, but I think history has shown that unless you change dramatically the form of human life, you're just going to continue to have these outbreaks. The last one, the Spanish flu, that ravaged the world. This I don't know if it's going to be as bad. It doesn't sound like it's going to be as bad as the Spanish flu, although people think it might be. But this is the history of humans living in these the really large groups, concentrated areas, cutting down all the forests, like you say. There's a lot of reasons, but this manipulation of their world and not leaving it alone, not living gently, and living in a very concentrated, high growth population centers, inevitably you're going to have outbreak after outbreak after outbreak, and it'll be something new. And if people just accepted this though, and they prepared, and they thought, well, if we're going to continue to live like this, we're going to need all these gas masks and surgical masks and respirators, gloves. We're just going to have to prepare for these things happening and happening and happening. And they might happen every 100 years. They might happen in less time. But in any case, they're going to get worse and worse. And then at the same time, you have the healthcare system, which is unprepared. I mean, so many things are being exposed by this virus. It's quite interesting.
No, it will definitely happen faster. I mean, just looking at the numbers, I think I read 60% of the pathogens appeared in the last 40 years. So the other 40%, these are older ones, and maybe even ones we can control already. So the chance is very, very likely that in the very near future we will have to face another outbreak like this, or maybe even a worse one. I mean, we can be lucky. This thing is not that bad.
No, this should kind of be a test. This is a test run for something much more serious. And who knows? Maybe it will become more serious, because there's some story that things are still mutating and they're still changing.
Yeah, but coronaviruses normally don't tend to mutate very much.
Oh no? Okay.
So that's a good thing. But who knows? I mean, they're still doing a lot of research. They don't know the virus very well yet. Yeah, we will see where this is going to. My future is hopefully in the middle of nowhere with a lot of plants, not trying to control them, just letting them do whatever they want to do. And I watched this beautiful permaculture documentary today. I hopefully, and when I have the possibility to go to my parents' place, my father, I don't have a very good relationship to him normally, but now he changed very much since this virus, and he said I should live with them, and I can help them with beekeeping and gardening, so I could learn a lot of useful things there, and I think that's a great possibility or opportunity right now.
Well, this is exactly what I was talking about, that the virus will cause people to retreat to their family units, and it will reinforce the close, tight bonds that people have with those closest to them and are most similar to them. That's a good thing. Death, this invisible death, it's kind of wonderful in that way, because there's positives that come out of it. The strengthening of the family and the small groups is one of them. I think that's great. I should mention it too, though, is that there's a coronavirus case at my job. Somebody tested positive just recently. They were keeping this information from us, interestingly enough. One of the truck drivers.
Okay. So how does this affect your work? Did you get a lot of materials like gloves and masks and whatsoever?
No. None at all. Nothing.
Okay. But you have to keep distance from other people, 2 meters?
I mean, they're talking about that, and they made some changes that you can't go into. There was a room where the dispatchers were that you would go into to pick up your papers for the trailers you were going to pull with your truck. Now you can't enter that room because it's a confined space, and they don't want more than 4 people in there at any time. And they're trying to clean, disinfect things, but everything though changed at the center when this positive test came out. Now they have 2 guys who just walk around cleaning everything, spraying everything. They just walk in circles through the entire place, spraying all night.
People will get some health problems because of all of these disinfection materials. I mean, if you wash your hands too often and use this disinfection. This kills all the good bacteria on your hands. I don't know.
Right, and don't they say that you want to constantly be exposing yourself to bacteria because it builds up your immune system by fighting these small outbreaks that you don't even know are happening. I mean, your immune system's constantly working, but if you live in a bubble and you're disinfected all the time, you become weak. Your immune system is not strong.
Yeah. So when is how much longer do you work in Dallas, and when do you finally move to the mountains?
Well, one of the problems is that the company has a hiring freeze right now until it's probably brought on by this trade war with China, which has affected the business, and now the coronavirus has further affected it. So I think there needs to be a resolution with the trade war and the tariff situation. And if the hiring freeze is lifted, then there'll be a lot more movement with jobs within the company. Because right now, there aren't any new openings. There aren't any new positions. So I've been watching the board that shows the new opportunities in the areas that I'm looking at in West Texas. There's been nothing. So I probably gonna have to just continue where I'm at.
There's no other possibilities to work for other companies.
It wouldn't. No, not really. No, I really have one of the best jobs in trucking. This is, yeah, in terms of pay and also the ability to go live in a very rural part of West Texas that nobody wants to live in, or Arizona or New Mexico. These beautiful places.
This permaculture guy, this American I met on the island, he lives in the mountains on the edge of the desert and the mountains in New Mexico. What he's growing there, this is just beautiful. You know what?
You're gonna have to put me in touch with this guy. Do you still have contact with this guy?
I'm still in touch with him.
Because it sounds like if he's in that mountain area of New Mexico, I'm trying to get in the mountain area of the same mountains, but on the Texas side.
No, but I think...
And so
he
probably...
didn't know that. No, but the mountains where he lives are the Rockies, as far as I know.
Oh, so he's near Arizona. He's on that border.
Yeah,
of Arizona.
I don't know. But it looked beautiful. On one side you had this desert, and on the other side you could see the beautiful Rockies covered in snow, and he in a very unfertile place, and with the permaculture he's doing there, he made everything so fertile. Everything is just green and growing. It's beautiful. So how much is he able to fully live off the land? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is. He's vegetarian.
Okay, so he's producing everything he needs to eat.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I'm sure he. I mean, he has two jobs too, but I can imagine that he does not. I mean, it's probably a very limited cuisine if you only live off the land you have. But I think he could be self-sufficient. Yeah.
Is he also living off the grid?
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of nowhere.
So he collects rainwater. He has what does he have? Solar panels?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the dream. Although I'm aware though that it takes a lot of work. It's not easy to build a life like that.
No, and then what he's doing, that's way too big. I would like to keep it small and simple. I mean, I would like to use every resources as much as possible, rainwater and every little piece of land I have there. I want that there's nothing wasted.
Well, I agree with that.
It should be small, but nothing should be wasted. Nothing should be just for aesthetic purposes. Everything should have a purpose to feed me and the people I live with there.
Yeah. Well, Spain is still on your.
I think that's the easiest easiest solution. And it's a great place. The countryside the landscape is beautiful, and yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. Why should I try to do something in South America where it's definitely more difficult in terms of bureaucracy? It's still my favorite continent, South America. Yeah, let's see.
It's your favorite?
Yeah, South America is something special. I'm sure you agree.
I do agree because you have the one great thing is if you learn one language you can go to mostly any place outside of Brazil.
And the people are actually great. I mean, now I lived with great people in Myanmar on a small island, and I had to when I did my visa runs in Thailand. But this is not satisfying, I think, to interact with an Asian person. That sounds very racist, but the mentality is so different. We don't understand each other. It's not only a language barrier, it's a cultural barrier.
I agree with that. That's one of the reasons. One of the things I also think is that I have more in common with, let's say, South American people like Colombians and Argentines especially, than I do with people from Europe. That's an interesting statement. I think that's true.
I think the same too. I have more in common with South Americans than with Americans.
Yes. South America seems to be a midway point between Europe and America. It's kind of a bridge, those people, culturally. Because Argentines they fancy themselves as being Italians or Europeans, but they're not. And they're also not South American Indians either, which they reject entirely. But they're certainly not European. But they have this great big country which is similar to the American West. You get out on the pampas with the gauchos and all of that, and they have a very American mentality. You get the same kind of mentality in Texas. It's a mentality that's created by the earth itself, the vast open spaces and the way the wind blows, and the fact there's no trees. That's like West Texas reminds me of Argentina. That's one reason I love it. It's interesting how the earth itself determines men. I think this is one idea that I have that I keep coming back to, whether it's coronavirus or any of these things. Anytime the earth itself and forces much greater than men that are beyond man's control speak and make their point and shake up men in their lives, men are forced to come to the conclusion and realize that they have much less control over the world than they think they do. And that's always a very important thing, because people living in these urban centers now, everywhere they look, they see other human beings. They see themselves. They look on their Facebook, their virtual world. They seem to have such a grasp of everything around them that when something like an earthquake happens or a coronavirus, something that shakes all of their human structures, it's a great reminder that man in his pride, he cannot overcome the earth itself.
Yeah, which is probably a very good thing. People should get back the feet on the ground. We are too arrogant already moving in on this planet. But what I was thinking, because my sister, for example, she's a pretty depressed person, and I was surprised that she keeps on being depressed actually in a crisis like this. Because I thought,
really?
Yeah, because for me it just makes sense that people are, I don't know, it's like a boost of adrenaline, which before, when you feel bad, and then there's something worse, or another bad thing happening, then the last thing the body is doing, it tries to survive as much as possible. And for a person that is already in such a bad mental state, being or having to deal with a crisis like this, for me it was just logical that a lot of people just say, okay, this depression is just superficial, I get rid of it and I focus on more important things. But for her, it's not really the case. That's weird.
So you talk to her about the coronavirus and she doesn't even care about it? It's
No,
irrelevant?
no,
She's
no,
still
no.
concerned
No,
with
she's
her
afraid
depression?
of it, but she still has problems being alone and not getting the attention she needed and things like this.
So her depression is still stronger than the coronavirus?
Yeah, I think so.
I wonder if that's the case for other people too. That they're so miserable.
For me, it was surprising. Because
I always thought that
if
physical
you face
pain.
Bigger problems than all of these superficial problems, or superficial, they don't play an important role anymore. I mean, this is how I saw it when I was sailing across the Pacific, and I had to deal with a mast that had a crack in the middle of the ocean, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm probably dying on this boat or on this ocean.
At that moment, you weren't worried about your stock portfolio.
Relevant anymore.
Yes. Well, that's the whole idea that death is a very great motivating force. It's a motivating thing. It makes all these other things disappear. But so few people have had experience with death or real risk that I think they take these depressions very, very seriously when they wouldn't perhaps if they had had other life experiences. So I'm surprised that she doesn't see that her depression is maybe not as important as what's going on. But I guess that's the true test of a depression. Can you still be depressed? Can you still be depressed if the coronavirus is there? And if the answer is yes, then you officially are a depressed person. You definitely are depressed.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope not.
She's not a faker. She's not faking it.
No,
that's the point.
She's not faking it. I don't think so. Yeah, anyway, so anything else we could talk about? What about Home Depot? When is the book coming?
Well, the Home Depot stories, I told you I'm adding a few, and I want to get that to the printer. I still would have to do the book design, but I have some very good ideas for the book design. So maybe, I don't know, I've kind of been distracted by this coronavirus thing with preparations and trying to buy toilet paper. Have you had problems with getting toilet paper in Austria?
I mean, not me personally, but in Austria, people are getting less and less civilized. So there is.
Well,
they were fighting in supermarkets. Also, I mean, I don't know what is going on behind the curtains, but I heard from a good friend who has a weapon and who bought some bullets for the weapon. And he saw 6 policemen in there buying each 1,500 shots. So because maybe the policemen or police officers, maybe they're also predicting that the crisis will become a problem that is also not only invisible, but also maybe something on the street or where you have to try to find food or whatever. I don't know. But
if there are going to be
there is
all these
things
people
like
out of
this
work.
happening. Yeah, people do grocery shopping in ways which are not normal.
Right. Well, for a while we couldn't get any toilet paper here because people were buying all the toilet paper.
That's
and so,
weird. I mean,
they had to put a rule. Yeah, it was just we produce paper. America makes its own toilet paper. It's not imported from anywhere. We make it here. If people just bought normal amounts of toilet paper, we would have been fine. But you get these madnesses and these manias with crowds. That's the real danger with these crowds. And the internet now and the news media, it's causing these dramatic moves by large groups of people. That's what's dangerous in this. I fear the crowds and the crowd mentality and the mob possessed by a madness much more than a virus. those people will create a stampede. They'll run you over.
That's one reason why I think after a test period of 2, 3, maybe maximum 4 weeks, they have to make a decision. Okay, we have to do it, or we just try to live a normal life again. I mean, what the Brazilian president is doing, he's just stupid. I mean, let's be honest. Because he's not even trying to understand the virus. And your president at the beginning, he didn't want to try to understand the virus either. But I think now he got some input from smarter people than him. But at some point, they have to make the decision if it's not working, if the curve is not flattening, that people have to get back to work. Because at some point, people will starve. I don't know. We get a lot of vegetable and fruit from Spain but also Italy. If these things don't come here anymore, and if we don't produce our own vegetables and fruit in Austria, this is becoming a serious problem, much more serious than a virus. And then they have to say, okay, let's get back to work.
Yeah, well, the social problems caused by hunger are much more serious. People will begin to kill people if they're hungry. Well, here we have all these homeless people, and all the American cities are filled with homeless people, and apparently they're not getting any more money from people in the streets, and all the restaurants are closed, so their sources of food have dried up, and I have real fears that these homeless people are going to go on a rampage looking for food.
Yeah, well, weird times we live in. But everybody, every person on this planet, almost every person is involved. That's what's interesting.
Yes, that's what's very interesting about it. The whole planet. Wow, what a moment. What an interesting moment. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you want to stop this?
Yeah.